Welcome, welcome to this place. Here we search for truth and understanding. Here we celebrate life and we contemplate its mysteries. Here we share healing and wholeness. So whoever you are, wherever you come from, whomever you love, we welcome you to this congregation.
We light this chalice today, remembering the Unitarian Universalist first principle to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We recognize that these are not just words to be spoken. Instead, they call us out of our comfort into an ever-deepening commitment. A commitment we make to the rights of all whose inherent worth and dignity are denied, diminished, or destroyed by systems of oppression. And they call us into the practice of looking into our own hearts with courage, honesty, and self-compassion.
I invite you now to listen to the poem, Let America Be America Again, written by Langston Hughes in 1935. I will begin by reading the first few stanzas, and then other readers throughout the service will continue the poem. Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain, seeking a home where he himself is free. America was never America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be that great, strong land of love, where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. It never was America to me. So I would invite you, friends, during this sacred time, to open your hearts to new truths, to new perspectives, and to new lived experiences. Come, let us worship together.
Come my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free. Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark? And who are you that draws your veil across the stars? I am the poor, white, fooled, and pushed apart. I am the Negro bearing slavery scars. I am the red man driven from the land. I am the immigrant clutching the hope I seek and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog or of mighty crush the weak.
Let freedom span both east and west, and love both south and north, in universal fellowship throughout the whole wide earth. In beauty, wonder everywhere, let us communion find. God worship be the golden cord, most binding humankind. Beyond all barriers of race and color, caste, or creed, let us make friendship, human worth, our common faith and deed. And east and west will meet and share, and south shall build with north, one human commonwealth of good throughout the whole wide earth.
When I was looking for a story to tell today, I found one written by a UU minister called Sheila's Story. The minister, Reverend Kenneth Collier, wrote about when he was a boy and going to a small grade school out in the country. There were no Black students there in that school because it was just for white children. Black children attended another school just for them. While he was in 5th grade, the laws changed and schools had to become integrated and open to all children. As a result, one Black student, a 6th grader, came to their school, a girl named Sheila. Things were quiet at first, and she was just another student there. But tension was rising in the town, and one day at recess, Kenneth heard a loud commotion out on the playground, and he went over to see. Children were standing around yelling racial insults and mean names at Sheila, who was in the center of all this crying. And she was angry and hurt. Kenneth saw the look of fear and pain in her eyes, and for the first time, he says, he realized that racism hurts people. He says he just wished he had done something to help Sheila, but he did not. He just stood there and watched this terrible thing happen. To this very day, Reverend Ken says he is ashamed of himself that he did not try to get an adult to intervene. This story reminded me of something from when I was about 7 or 8 years old, which was a while ago. Our family lived in a town similar to the towns around here, in a state where the public schools had not been legally segregated. My story is not about what happened at the school, at my school, but with me and the girl who lived down the street a few houses away from mine. Janie was her name, and she was a year younger than I was. Her mother was born in the Philippines, and her father was from somewhere else. I knew this because my mother told me. but I'm not sure why she mentioned it. Janie had long black hair, large brown eyes, and brown skin the color of coffee with cream in it. We met each other soon after my family moved to that town when I was 6. And she and I enjoyed playing together now and then after school and on weekends. We were not best friends, but we were friends, and there were no other children our ages nearby. The time came for my birthday and a birthday party. This was when I was 7 or 8. I clearly remember saying to my mother that I wanted to invite everyone in my class from school, but I did not want to invite my friend Janie. I don't remember my mother saying anything back to me about that. But our next door neighbor was visiting at the time. She was a grandmotherly kind of woman who I really, really liked. When she heard what I said, she bent down, looked me in the eye, and said, "Janie is a nice girl. You don't want to hurt her feelings." Her words really sunk in with me, and this is the part I remember most strongly. Why did I not want to invite Janie to my birthday party? Was it because she was a year younger and she would not know any of my classmates? Was it also maybe because I felt she was different, because she looked different and her parents looked different from me and my family? I sensed my mother thought of them as being different from us, because although my mother was nice to everyone, I noticed she did not visit with Janie's mother like she did with our other neighbors. We never spoke about it. I am sorry that I said what I said that day, and I'm grateful to the neighbor woman who said what she said to me. Racism is easy to recognize in Reverend Kenneth's story. Is it in my story too? Something to think about.
I am the young man, full of strength and hope, tangled in that ancient endless chain of profit, power, gain, of grab the land, of grab the gold, of grab the ways of satisfying need, of work the men, of take the pay, of owning everything for one's own greed. I am the farmer, bondsman to the soil. I am the worker sold to the machine. I am the Negro, servant to you all. I am the people, humble, hungry, mean. Hungry yet today, despite the dream. Beaten yet today, oh pioneers, I am the man who never got ahead, the poorest worker bartered through the years. Yet I'm the one who dreamt our basic dream in the old world while still a serf of kings, who dreamt a dream so strong, so brave, so true, that even yet its mighty daring sings in every brick and stone, in every furrow turned that's made America the land it has become. Oh, I'm the man who sailed those early seas in search of what I meant to be my home. For I'm the one who left dark Ireland's shore and Poland's plain and England's grassy lea, and torn from black Africa's strand, I came to build a homeland of the free.
Contrast. My ideas, your ideas. My reality, your reality. My truth, your truth. Contrast. That's what I hear in Langston Hughes's poem. Contrast, like when you edit a photo on your phone, a little tick mark that you move back and forth to enhance the brightness or clarity of your photo. Move the tick mark in one direction, you see more shadow. Move it in the other direction and you get an overexposed, bleached out image. Move it to the ideal spot and the image is just right. Clear, sharp, in perfect focus. I compare my own experience of learning what I didn't realize I didn't know about race and racism to adjusting my internal contrast. The first step for me was to become conscious that there was, in fact, a contrast setting in my mind. And then to notice how shifting that contrast setting allowed me to see the dark shadows that were all around me. And then to acknowledge that the contrast setting in my own brain could be exceptionally different than the setting in someone else's brain as a function of their race and their lived experience. Once I started playing around with this contrast setting, it became hard for me to ignore the impacts and effects of racism that I began to see all around me. One personal example I can share is seared into my memory. Before I started delving into my own brain to see where my own racist thoughts and ideas lived, a friend came up to me 5 or 6 years ago, and she told me how distraught she was about the police killing of Tamir Rice, the 12-year-old Black boy who was playing with a replica toy gun and was shot and killed almost immediately after the police arrived on the scene. It's difficult for me to admit today, but I remember exactly the thoughts that ran through my mind at the time. I immediately labeled my friend as one of those people who think everything has to do with race and who will use that lens to magnify or distort the truth. In my mind, I had it all figured out with my theories. There were a few bad apple cops. Policing's hard and scary. Sometimes mistakes happen when you're in dicey situations as a result of misunderstandings and split-second decisions. Of course, these theories can be part of the truth sometimes, but what I entirely neglected to factor into my convenient theories was the actual lived experience of Black folks, particularly Black males. If the duration and the number of Black Lives Matter protests throughout last year taught me anything, it was to believe people who are telling you what their lived experience is. The killing of unarmed Black folks resonates deeply with Black folks because it exposes and echoes their lived experience, plain and simple. For those familiar with the New Testament, I was doubting Thomas, and police body cam footage that caught these horrific incidents on video had become the wounds that I had to see and feel in order to believe. I had a lot of reading, a lot of reflecting, a lot of honest soul searching to do to see the roots of racism in my own brain. I'm still on that journey. I know I cannot eradicate these thoughts until I am honest with myself about them. So I try to focus on my goal of becoming anti-racist rather than on my shame. Until each of us is honest with ourselves and one another about the internal racist thoughts and ideas that we harbor, the racist impulses that flicker in our minds, until we name them and own them for what they are, until each of us acknowledges that it is not right to place the burden of changing racist systems on those most oppressed by those systems, we will not become the America we imagine ourselves to be. And it starts with an honest self-reckoning, the acknowledgement that your lived experience as a white person is not the only lived experience that matters. So I will leave you with a challenge. Start playing around with your contrast settings. Listen and open to the experiences of people who look differently than you do. You might be surprised at what you didn't know you didn't know.
The free? Who said the free? Not me. Surely not me. The millions on relief today? The millions shot down when we strike? The millions who have nothing for our pay? For all the dreams we've dreamed and all the songs we've sung and all the hopes we've held and all the flags we've hung. The millions who have nothing for our pay, except the dream that's almost dead today. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be, the land where every man is free. The land that's mine, the poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain. From those who live like leeches on people's lives, we must take back our land again, America.
Decentering whiteness. Decentering whiteness. Just the name rubbed me the wrong way, although I wasn't sure why yet. But when I started that workshop in early October, I knew it wasn't always going to be comfortable. When asked in the first session what my greatest fear about doing the workshop was, I replied that I feared getting to the end and finding myself pushed away from anti-racism work by what I heard and read. That I would be expected to align with a particular way of thinking and be unable to comply. I wanted to do the right thing, but I have always had a stubborn inner commitment to the truth as I see it, even if I haven't always had the courage to express it. The discomfort didn't end with the workshop title. Anytime I ventured an idea that I thought might not be politically correct, I worried a bit how others would see me. Anytime I read something that expressed Black anger and impatience, I wondered why I wasn't angry and impatient. I found myself quibbling sometimes with our readings, silently objecting to certain generalizations or details or steps of logic. And perhaps most of all, most uncomfortable of all, I wrestled with the shame and confusion of some of my past interactions with people of color. But there was grace too. Finding out that other participants had similar doubts and concerns, similar discomforts, similar troubling incidents in their past. Some of the readings were so lucid and compelling that I saw the pervasiveness of racism in America more vividly than before. The multiple cases of institutional racism that I already knew of in policing, in housing, in the court systems, even in the hallowed New Deal and GI Bill, became linked together in my mind to reveal an undeniable system. Perhaps not a system created by a single person or cabal, but nevertheless a system informed by a continuum over time of racist assumptions and intents. Grace also came from spending time in what we thought of as a brave space. Not a safe space where no one's feelings would be hurt, but a space where people could speak openly and not fear judgment, condemnation, or shunning. You might hear honest feedback about what you said, and I did, and it might feel confrontational, and sometimes it did, but it was never unloving. And grace came after the end, weeks later, when I realized that my perspective had shifted just by being in the conversation. That dedicating substantial time to listening to, reading, considering, and discussing viewpoints that I knew of, but hadn't devoted myself to examining, had broadened my understanding. We hadn't, after all, been asked to change our minds in any particular way, only to give space in our hearts for the truths of others. And that, in turn, did change my mind, not through indoctrination, but by widening my truth to incorporate the truths of others. I saw clearly that quibbling with someone's factual accuracy is to ignore the deeper message of their experience and the importance of their expression. I know now better when to use my training in critical thinking and when to listen heart to heart. I now believe that the key to diminishing racism is not argument, not even discussion, but acknowledgement at every level, personal, community, national, of our history of wrongs, and especially of the suffering they have produced. Acknowledgement, yes, and then repair. So this has been a spiritual journey for me, not merely an intellectual one. I feel myself clearer in my thoughts about racism and its centrality to our country's communal health. I am at greater peace with my past. I feel myself more open to others and more accepting of myself. I have taken a small but important step on the path to the beloved community.
Oh, yes, I say it plain. America never was America to me. And yet I swear this oath, America will be. Out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft and stealth and lies, we, the people, must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain. All the stretch of these great green states, and make America again.
My invisibility. I grew up in white Jewish neighborhoods and didn't know anything about race. I didn't have a race. So when I went to a new high school and I was sitting in the bleachers in a basketball game and people were yelling out, "Soul," I didn't know what it meant. I asked one of the girls next to me and she brushed her cheek, pointing to her black skin. That was 53 years ago. I finally came up against race when I moved to Los Angeles in 1988. LA County is 11% African American and 47% Hispanic, but it's very segregated. There's Compton, South Central, which are 90% Black and Hispanic. And the West Side, the beach towns, Beverly Hills, Westwood, they're 90% white. I moved to California to join the research faculty at the University of Southern California, which is at the north end of South Central. And on the afternoon of April 29th, 1992, 4 white police officers were acquitted of using excessive force in the arrest and beating of Rodney King, a Black man. I was driving through South Central 3 hours before the riots started. They went on for 5 days. 63 people were killed, almost 2,400 injured, more than 12,000 arrested. 3,600 fires were set, destroying 1,100 buildings, property damage of $1 billion. My parents and I watched the riots and fires on TV from my living room. The National Guard surrounded my neighborhood. The stores around USC went up in flames. And on May 2nd, 6 o'clock in the morning, my parents and I drove to UCLA in Westwood for a scheduled eye operation that my mother needed. I was petrified. Even being on the white side of the city, anything could happen. We had heard gangs had stolen police cars and uniforms. Ever since my house caught fire when I was a child, I have hated that smell of burning buildings. And while I waited for my mom, I stood alone outside in a UCLA courtyard trying to comprehend what was happening. The acrid smell hung in the air. The riots had nothing to do with me. I was white. Race was not my problem. But I realized if a group of people could be so angry that they will tear down a city, that something was drastically wrong. And standing in that courtyard, smelling the anger and the hopelessness, I vowed to myself to learn more about racism, to do something, to stop being part of the invisible. It's hard to see the invisible. I was like a superhero with an invisible power that I didn't understand, and I was slowly waking up. There were things I needed to learn, like how my lifestyle contributes to those riots. I watched a film about Jane Elliott's blue-eyed, brown-eyed discrimination exercise. I read Peggy McIntosh's essay, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, and I studied. I had to learn to bring race into my life and to stop my invisible collusion with a system. My friend Sandra has to show her driver's license to store clerks, so I started doing that. My friend Carolyn gets followed around in stores, so I tell clerks that what I am there to buy. And I wear 2 different color socks every day to remind myself I am part of the problem unless I actively work against systemic racism. But something is still very wrong. These last weeks, we watched a group of people try to tear down their country. I could smell the anger and hopelessness, but how am I contributing to it? I need to be part of the solution. If one choice is being invisible and privileged, I choose the side of soul. I choose those innocent Black cheeks whose only crime is being born into a system that favors me. I choose to stand up as an ally and actively work for racial justice. As Martin Luther King said, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And he said, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Thank you.
We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking
find ourselves this morning at a time when justice and equity are not simply an idea or a concept, but things that are necessary and urgent to bring about the change we wish to see in the world. So in closing, I leave you with the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., words spoken on April 4th, 1967. We are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action. So now let us begin. Now let us rededicate ourselves to the long and bitter and, yes, beautiful struggle for a new world. So may it be. Amen.